Okay, welcome everyone. This is Edna White. I'm your host today for a most important conversation of the impact of divorce on men and their health. And today, our guests, we have a few more that are coming, but today our guests are Jesston Williams and Michael Overlie. And they can introduce themselves and what they do, and we can get started with the conversation at hand. So,
Jesston,
Jesston,
please.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Jesston Williams, and I am Executive Director of Tangelic, which is an organization here in the Phoenix area that helps people restore their purpose in life. I do a lot of work with the homeless as well as other locals in the community to help them get back on track. A lot of people that have experienced traumatic events in their life, a lot of people that have experienced traumatic events in their youth specifically. And I also host a podcast, the Hidden Gateway podcast as well, for about 2.5 years now. And Edna, thank you for having me.
You're welcome, of course. Michael?
Hi, everybody. I'm Michael Overlie. I've done this before with Edna and Jesston on some other subjects, and it's quite a pleasure to be here and an honor. So I'm grateful for the work you guys are doing and what we can do to help others. So
Great.
I do a couple things, and I have a couple of different coaching businesses, but I really specify in helping men. And my favorite is as a canine partnered men's coach. So I help high performing guys who have a deep bond with their dogs learn another way to be, another way to show up in the world, ditch the anger and come from a place of love instead.
Great.
Awesome.
Justin, you didn't mention your book because I always refer to your book, so please.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for the reminder. Yes. My book, it's my memoir, In the Eye of the Father, a memoir of faith and redemption as well, that was published November of 2021. I also have another book in the works that will be published next month in April called The Hidden Gateway of Knowledge. It's an edited book where I have several authors from around the world contributing a chapter, each writing in their own realm, if you will, their specialty. So looking forward to that being published next month.
Great. So we do have three other guests that were supposed to come on as panelists: Douglas Wick and Seth Miller, and also Kyle Spyrides, who are in different parts of the world, but hopefully they'll enter soon. But we're going to get started because we want to talk about this really important subject, the impact of divorce on men's health. It's like in a matter of minutes and moments, weeks, even months, your whole life can be turned upside down. What's supposed to be forever, a commitment that never ends, and then it ends early. It's like shaking the foundations of the elements of your life, your faith, just your principles, your moral principles. It just shakes that foundation. Divorce is becoming an increasingly common reality for married couples all across the globe. This commonality doesn't make the harsh consequences any less and challenging. Today, we're going to talk about what it is, how men feel, not how men feel, but how men feel and how they kind of remedy. And we want to bring support into that in the face of divorce so that we can process and help build despite the traditional masculinity standards. So I thank my guests today for being here, and we're going to start off. We have collected a few questions all together from everyone, and we're going to ask those questions one by one, and they're going to give their story or their answer and give the examples on remedies to that. So we're going to start with the first question. Should I go to counseling after divorce?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in fact, I would take it a step further and say that the counseling needs to be done prior to the divorce being finalized. I mean, talk about a traumatic event, right? As you mentioned early on, Edna, you have these hopes and dreams, and you're with this person, your spouse, for X number of time, years or whatever it may be. And then you get to a point where there's a separation. That's trauma, right? That's a very traumatic event. I'm not sure everyone sees it that way, but it is. And when we talk about men, experiencing or going through divorce. Men, the studies show that men have a 250% higher early mortality rate compared to women, right? So there are certain things that men must be aware of. And without doubt, counseling is one of those things. You know, and I know this from personal experience in regards to suppressing emotions and suppressing feelings, right? We all need someone to speak with regarding the things that we go through in our life, right? That is, it's not healthy to contain those emotions, those feelings. You know, we talk about going through divorce, we talk about anxiety, we talk about fear, we talk about starting over, we talk about depression. So without doubt, it is very important for men to seek out therapy, a counselor, someone to speak with. As I said, yes, afterwards, but before, you know, if that's possible.
Right. How do you know when it's before? How do you
Well,
know that?
well, you know, one thing I've learned is that men and women suffer differently, right? Women, studies show that women are the ones that try the hardest to hold on to a relationship, but at the
Okay.
same time, it's easier for them to move on or to move forward, if you will. Now, I would recommend if someone's in a situation where the divorce isn't a surprise, because that happens a lot when someone served divorce papers, are like, oh my God, I
Yeah.
knew we had issues, but I didn't know it was this serious to you, right? But if someone knows beforehand that it's heading in that direction, I think it's a really good idea to seek counseling at that point. You know, have someone that they can speak with, even if they've gone through marriage counseling in the past with their significant other. I think it's important for a man to go alone by himself, you know, to be able to express himself to the person they're speaking with regarding their feelings and emotions, that without doubt.
Okay. Because I know as a woman, sometimes it looks like men don't express themselves, right? At all. That, I mean, they look rock hard, and it's like, okay, they're not feeling it, but I am. And I'm this is, I know it's an extension of the question. How is it that you can express to that person, your soon to be ex, that you have these feelings, or do you at all? Do you at all?
Well, I think you do. I think you do. In fact, I know you do. I think it's very important to express to your ex. So, and just so I understand your question correctly, you're talking about speaking to the ex before
Yeah.
the divorce is finalized. Is that correct?
Yeah, like it seems, because I've been through a divorce, it seems that they don't, like, men just don't have like this, like, you're blubbering and crying and worry about everything and you're depressed. It seems like they're not. And I would that it would have been shown to me
Right.
that, that, yeah, it's hurting me too, but it's something that has to be done. Is that something that counseling can bring out, or will it happen? Because I never received that, and I just felt like a little blank from that. You know what I mean? Like, I felt blank.
Right. And I think that's historically true with men holding in their feelings and not expressing themselves in the manner they should in a healthy way. Right. But I do believe that a lot of that is changing because mental health has been brought to the forefront a lot more over the last 10 to 15 years or so. But I think, it's fear. Right. Fear.
Okay.
We all, men and women, have been programmed to believe that a man is should be a certain way, right? The provider and protector, right? And therefore we are to show no emotion. We are, and that can also cause issues communicating with our significant other as well. And I think a big part, another thing that plays a big part, is how that individual was raised, whether or not that person's his father was in the home as well, and what type of upbringing was provided by his father. Like for me personally, and my story, my father was alcoholic, Marine, and child is be seen and not heard, which caused communications issues for me, right? And I can only imagine if things would have been different, if I was allowed to communicate and allowed to express myself. That would have helped me at various points in my life, dealing with various relationships, if you will. But counseling is a big thing. But I think for men, whether it's through counseling or with the spouse directly, I think it's an
Mhm.
issue of getting over that hump or that hill of fear for men, and being vulnerable, right? They
Right.
have to get to a point where they're vulnerable and feel free about expressing themselves. And that can be hard. That's very hard to do, especially if there are some trust issues there with
Okay.
that spouse, you know. So
Okay. Mike, what do you think?
Huge can. This is a huge can. So most men don't have
Mm.
the skill set.
Ah,
We don't have, excuse me, we don't have the language for this a lot of times because of the way we're raised.
yeah.
And we're not, one, taught to do this. We're actually taught to do the opposite,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know, stay tough, be the one, be the provider,
Yeah.
always be there, no matter what. Don't let them see you hurt. Don't let them see you cry. All this other messaging that we get tells us to, no, we can't go there. We can't do this thing. And so when this relationship falls apart, you know, I don't have the language. I don't have the skills to deal with it.
Right.
So we shut down. We shut down. And the piece about being vulnerable is massive, but we mostly don't feel safe being vulnerable. So
Right.
how do we guide men to this place where it's like, it's okay, right? You can actually share this thing. So if counseling isn't ideal for some people, a
Mhm.
men's group, maybe you do have a really close friend and just say, look, I got to unload, you know, but
Right.
you've got to start somewhere. If you keep it in, we know what happens. Turn on the
Right.
news, right?
Yeah.
Our
Right.
society is full of people who don't know how to deal with their emotions and take it out on other people.
Right.
well said.
Yeah, that's really serious. And also, if you're holding it in, what else does it do to the men? If you just holding it in, what does it do?
Besides shortening our lifespans, you want a whole list?
Ooh, yeah, I want a whole
Yeah.
list. I want it.
So we have obviously the mental effects, right? Mental health is such a huge thing. There's such a negative stigma. And you know, women are so much more willing to and ready to go get help when they need it. Not all of them, but as a larger percentage of the population,
Yeah.
absolutely. Men won't because, you know, they're going to think that someone's judging them. That like, oh,
Right.
you can't handle your whatever it is. And it's unfortunate. And you know, as Jesston said, it is changing. So that's really, really
Right.
heartening to see more and more men stepping up and taking care of themselves.
Mhm.
But we wait for someone else to give us permission to do so many things in our lives. And I would encourage any guy out there, give yourself permission to take care of yourself
Yeah.
because no one's coming, right? The
Yeah.
superhero you loved as a kid is not going to come flying and save your butt. So we need to find a better way.
That's
Right.
awesome,
Okay.
Mike. I love that. Give yourself permission to take care of yourself. I mean, talk about
Mm.
taking accountability and responsibility for your well-being, even though you're going through a traumatic experience like a divorce. You know,
Yeah.
we have to, as men, when we experience those different things, we have to step up and say, hey, you know, I need to take control of this now because it can take me to a place I don't need to be. I mean, I think we've all seen it, right? You mentioned, hey, look what you see on the news, you know, unfortunately from time to time. So I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's good. That's good stuff. Okay, next question. What's the balance for men and children after divorce, if there are children?
I'll start this one. So my first experience with divorce was when my folks split. I was 11, 12, excuse me. And there was already a lot of other things going on,
Right.
we'll say, in the house. And somehow I got it into my head that I so further disappointed my dad that he left. Right. Somehow I made this whole thing about me that
Wow.
I pushed him out, drove him away. Right. And I became suicidal. Um, I mean, it's fascinating, right? How does this young kid think that it's his fault? But that's where I
Right.
was, right? The messaging that I had growing up and the things that had happened, that's where I was. And my dad was not able, right? He didn't have the skills, he didn't have the language to talk about what was going on from his side of things. He literally bags packed, gone,
Mm.
Wow.
right? And my mom called us all down and says, kids, your father has something to tell you. He couldn't even look us in the eye, right? He picked up his stuff, walked out the door. So, and what we didn't know this was coming, right? That goes back to this communication piece. Again, talk to your kids. I mean, they see things, they feel things, they know something's not right, not happy. To spring something like that on them, probably not a great idea. And afterwards, talk to them, ask them how they're doing, how they're feeling, and tell them that it's not their fault. You can't blame your kid for your divorce, right? So, yeah, you want to man up, right? That's a term that gets used in the wrong way. You want to man up, be a real father and put yourself in their shoes and imagine how terrified they are. But again, communication is so hard for us because we're not taught to do it.
Yeah.
So well said.
That goes for any age, because I know when I, divorced, my kids are older. It wasn't their dad, but I had to have constant conversation about that. How did that make them feel? Because they became close to his children. How did it make them feel? Will you continue the relationship? That kind of thing. From a woman's perspective, not from men's. But it was easier for me on that side to kind of keep them together because they are still friends and they communicate and they love each other still. But it was very hard for them to understand what divorce was, really hard. Did you find that, Jesston?
Yeah, absolutely. And Michael, man, I tell you, Michael, you bring up some excellent points, and I couldn't agree more. 100% communication, right? As you were speaking, it made me think back when I was a kid, when my parents divorced. So I was about 5 or 6 years old. They used to argue all the time, but then I remember there was this huge argument where my dad chased my mom out of the house with a knife, right? And then from there, we left. We were in Michigan. From there, we moved to Ohio later that night. My sister came and picked us up, and we left. And no one ever spoke with me about what happened or that I wouldn't be seeing my dad ever. I didn't know what divorce was. I just knew that my mom said, pack your stuff. We're moving to Ohio after this traumatic argument that I experienced them have, right? And I can only think how things would have been different for me if at least my mom would have said, hey, this is what's going on. Your father and I have been having issues, as you've seen the last couple of years. And, unfortunately, we can no longer be together. That would have worked wonders for me, just to give me somewhat of a peace of mind or a better understanding of what was going on. Again, I was about 6 years old, but it was such a transition for me, right? Because I'm living in this home that had become kind of quite chaotic over the last 2 years, maybe. And I definitely noticed that, and was very aware of that. And then this argument happens. We moved to Ohio in one day. So now I'm living with my sister and her family. I'm starting a new school. It was just so many things going on, and if I could have just had someone to say, hey, I got you. Look, this is what's going on. And, didn't have that. But things, I'm sure, would have been a world of a difference if that was there. So, I couldn't agree more. That communication with your kids and then you talk about, spending time with your kid if you're a father and the kids are with the mom, if the mom is open to that. And then you have the child support, and then unfortunately some women take advantage of that. It's a lot that goes into play. But at the end of the day, people need to be wise enough to say, hey, we need to do what's best for our children.
How do men balance that, though? How do they put that in perspective? Because as a woman, I would probably put it on my calendar, and work that. But how do men put that in perspective? Like, okay, I know I have to do that. How do they do that? I want to know, how do they do it?
Well, I would say that it's important to think with logic rather than emotion. And then once you're able to do that and kind of be the observer of the situation, if possible, if you're able to observe that situation, kind of leaving that emotional element out of it, and then I think you go from there. you go from there, and you are then able to decide what's best for you and your children moving forward. And
Gotcha.
I think Mike said it best. Man up, taking accountability, responsibility, for knowing and accepting what's going on in life right now, knowing and accepting, and then taking the necessary steps to move forward to ensure that you have a healthy future.
Yeah,
That's good.
yeah, that's
Mike, do you
well
have
said,
something?
Justin.
Yeah.
Excuse me. That whole man up and man card thing, I think, takes us typically so far away from where we need to be. But another thing you mentioned was the responsibility piece. Men are taught to be responsible for so many things, but not their own feelings, their own emotions, right? So how do you think your child feels? You think you're scared and uncomfortable. That's the thing, is just sit back for a second and go, oh God, what's this kid going through? We get so focused on, oh, I need to do this. I need to behave this way. I need to show up, or I'm going to get phone calls and lawyers and whatever. Slow down, right? Slow down. Everybody is hurting right now, right?
Yeah.
So if you can slow down a little bit and come from this other place and say, how do I create this balance? Right. Because the way I do it isn't going to be the way Jesston does it.
Sure.
Right?
Absolutely not. Yeah.
And that's okay, right? Because we have different experiences and different expectations. But slowing down, right? Everybody's frantic, upset, pulses are off the charts, stuff's flying across the room, whatever. You gotta, again, this is giving yourself permission to not have to have all the answers, and just sit with it and try and take everybody into consideration and go, oh, maybe I need to show up differently.
Good stuff.
So yeah, it's good. So we have two questions, and they're similar to one another. One is, how do you handle divorce if you're the one deciding to break up? And the second one is, how do you handle divorce if your spouse is the one that breaks up? So I think we'll take the first one first, if you could.
Yeah. So when I left my wife, I was up to here, right? Oh no, maybe it was here. Maybe it was here. And I didn't have great skills. I wasn't a good communicator, even though at the time I thought I was. I thought like, oh yeah. Turns out I really wasn't, and I didn't handle it well. And I up and boogied, right? Up and out. I was willing to come back and have conversations afterwards, but the way I felt, it didn't matter what I said to this woman. My opinion didn't matter, didn't count. And I was actually told that to my face once. And I was like, oh, I think it's time to go. So,
there you go.
But I was still willing to be uncomfortable, meet face to face, have conversations about things afterwards to try and mitigate, the fear and the anger that comes along with that. I would like to think that I would handle it pretty well from the other side, but until you're in it, you don't know. You don't know.
Do you expect the anger to be part of it? Did you expect it?
I don't think I even thought about it.
Okay.
That there wasn't a consideration. It was definitely an effect from my decision. There was a lot of anger coming my way. And I understand there's obviously there's a ton of fear, uncertainty, fear of the unknown. What's my future going to be? What's going to happen now? There's a million questions. But it was presented back to me in an angry manner, which made it even harder to communicate. But I knew I needed to try and show up.
Right. Okay.
Showing up, that's so important. And like you, Mike, I went through something similar, right? And with my oldest son's mother, we were together for several years, obviously had a child together, lived together, and the whole nine. We never married. We attempted to get married one time, but that didn't work out, which was a divine intervention, thank God. But I went through that as well. And she was a narcissist, a manipulator, and did several things throughout our relationship to where I could not trust her. You know, I'm talking infidelity and other things and money situations too, right? Where she was stealing from me. And you know, there was a lot of anger there. And I, you know, we would break up temporarily, get into these huge arguments, and then I would take her back. I mean, this went on for a while. I just take her back and I take her back until I just got to the point one evening when she told me something, and I had to, you know, get real with myself. I said, I cannot go through this anymore. I was tired. I was so tired at that point, you know. Again, just not setting my boundaries with people, right? Not knowing how to communicate. So I just told her to get out. You know, I told her to get out, to leave. And it just came down to that. And I know that several interactions after that, probably for several years, actually, you know, I was you know, I was at my best, if you will, right? And you know, I'm not trying to, you know, throw her under the bus or anything like that. But she has her own issues, right? Her children weren't her top number one priority, you know, and she didn't know how to be the type of woman that I needed or even wanted at that point later on before the breakup. But I had a lot of built up anger. You know, I had a lot of built up anger, and it got to the point where, again, I'm just tired, and, you know, I had to leave. You know, now looking back on it, 23 years later, I definitely would have handled it much different. You know, I wouldn't have, you know, allowed myself to be mistreated as long as I did, and I would have definitely communicated better. You know, kind of put my foot down, if you will, and let her know that, you know, that the type of behavior won't be tolerated. So, yeah, it was definitely a learning experience, a necessary experience, by the way.
Do you think that was like you were resentful after a while?
You know, I was. There was some resentment there, but now there was some resentment in regard to how I was treated. But the greatest or the most resentment was to the type of mother that she was to our children, you know. And it was a whole lot going on in that relationship, you know, but that's where the greatest amount of resentment was. And I carried that for years up until about 2015. And I was finally able to just release all that. So
okay. What is the most difficult issue you had to deal with during your divorce?
Most difficult issue I had to deal with, without doubt, infidelity. Without doubt, infidelity. You know, this was a woman who was just man crazy, right? It was just man crazy. You know, I met her right around 18. You know, my son was born when I was 19, my first son. So I was a very young father. And you know, we lived together for many years. And this is why I tell young people all the time now, don't get married when you're young. You have to experience life. You have to experience life. You may know what you want, but you don't know what you need when you're
That's a good one. I like that.
Yeah, we don't know what we don't know what we need when you're
even as adults, we don't know that either.
Some adults, they don't. But you know, teens and early 20s, I really believe we don't know what we need from our significant others. And without doubt, the infidelity and, you know, that just caused a lot of issues, trust issues. So
Mike?
Mine was financial. And the deceit that came around that ended up in bankruptcy.
Deceit around it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it didn't matter how much I worked, how much extra I worked. Money would just disappear. It was crazy.
Wow.
So bankruptcy, got out of, you know, actually worked our way out of that, but it just kept going. And that was one of the things that it didn't matter what I did or said. Could I have done better? Absolutely. But the whole way through, I never really knew what she needed and what would make her happy. Well, neither did she, right? So, so she would do these things and spend money on herself to make herself feel better. And I find out later she learned that from her mom.
Right.
And so, yeah, I was really angry for a long time afterwards.
Yeah.
And one day I was like, everybody's got something, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's got something. And so her wounds showed up in that way, right? And the decisions she made. And mine showed up in the way they showed up for me. And I've decided to change all of that. And so I'm not angry with her anymore, because I can see that hurt 5-year-old girl standing in the corner crying, right? Yeah. And that's I can hold people in a different way now.
Right.
But for me it was it was lying about lying, and and not considering me whatsoever in all kinds of different situations, and then struggling when there's no way we should have been struggling.
Right. So, like, you know how they say that people who live together, they kind of like resemble each other or do the same things. The bad issues, like the deceit with the money, different issues. I'm not saying infidelity, no, not that, but like things like smaller things, like, just doing things, similar things, like keeping things. Did you acquire some like habits that the other person had?
That's a good question. I think now my wife and I, we've been married for, I should know this off the top of my head. 15 years. It'll be 16 years this year. Yeah.
Okay. That's good.
But yeah, 16 years this year. And like my mom, she calls us two peas in a pod. Because our humor is the same, our way of thinking is the same. We align, on many levels. Though we do have a lot of differences, it's like the perfect balance, if you will.
Yeah.
But specific things, wow, nothing really comes to mind in this moment. Maybe to come to me eventually before we move on to the next topic.
All right. It was just a question I was thinking about. I was like, oh, okay, because I know some people like kind of. One specific client I had, her and her mom were hoarders, and her husband acquired it.
Wow.
So it was like everybody was hoarding. So I had to work with everybody as a family. So I just wanted to see if you kind of acquired, some kind of, I don't know what it is, issue or something that they had, or characteristic or something like that. If money was an issue, like, because I know for me, if my family had a money issue, I would say, oh, I don't want to do that. And then sometimes you end up doing exactly that because you see it. So that's why I asked, Mike, you have anything to say about that?
No, nothing that I can think of, and I'm glad for it. Again, not to put down my ex. She's smart, she's talented, hardworking. She does amazing things helping other people, right? So she's a good lady. We just weren't a good couple.
Yeah. So what are some of the common pitfalls men should avoid when going through divorce?
Well, I think we talked about it earlier, right? When it comes down to what comes to communication, right? Suppressing our feelings, just not, letting that come out. I can't stress enough how important it is to have someone to speak with. Well, and I love the men's group. I think Michael said that earlier. Having a group of men that may be experiencing the same thing, as well as others that have been there already as well, right? And because when you go through things like divorce or any traumatic experience, a lot of times people can feel like it's only them. They're the only one in the world going through it. At least that's what it may feel like. So when you have someone that you can speak with, and then that person can say, oh yeah, I know that, because let's face it, unless you've experienced, you really can't, really can't relate unless you've actually been through a divorce, right? So just to have someone to say, hey, you know what, I understand that, brother. I understand what you went through. I understand what you're feeling. This is how I dealt with it, and this is how a buddy of mine dealt with it. Maybe that'll work for you. But without doubt, a pitfall is not communicating. And another one would be staying in that place of pity, sorrow, and fear. right?
Mm.
I think it's very important to have a plan. When you get hit with those papers, you should immediately have a plan. Go to counseling. Okay, what does my life look like in a year, in 3 years, in 5 years, in 7 years? In fact, a divorce for some can also bring a sense of freedom as well. After when the dust clears, you have this newfound freedom and this new outlook on life. So I definitely recommend men to look forward to a better tomorrow as they go through that chaos and confusion.
That's good. That's good.
That's Jesston, you hit it on the head. Being heard, right? The ability to be heard and seen by another guy who knows where you've been. The details may be different, and those don't matter, but somebody who gets it is massive for us. Because even with our best friends, a lot of times we'll mask up, right? We'll say, "Oh no, yeah, no, we're good. Oh, that bitch, whatever," and that doesn't help at all, right? That's just putting on the face, trying to convince everybody else that you're okay. Your energy says something else. You're snapping at the smallest thing that would normally not make you upset. So your feelings are still coming out in some way. But the ability to be held in that space is so important. And I would encourage guys to find somebody. Go talk to a tree. I mean, just start learning how to. I'm not kidding, right?
Yeah, that's great.
People do it.
Just practice. Like, this hurt my feelings. This pissed me off. Blah 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 blah. And then you listen to the words you're using. And like, oh, is that really me saying this stuff? Just get used to creating that language for yourself. Because again, we're not taught this. If you don't teach yourself or seek someone out who can help you, that's going to be really, really difficult.
Well said. I'd like to add, at the end of the day, it's what you make of it, right? What you decide to do, man. So what you make of it is how your outcome will be as you progress through it and afterwards as well. So
yeah. Well, that brings up a whole other thing. Everything we do, we're making a choice, right? I'm choosing to stay angry. I'm choosing to not talk to people. I'm choosing to shut down. Right? And it's because I'm afraid. Guys are so deathly afraid of letting anybody know that they're afraid. But we know it anyway, right? You're not really hiding anything from anybody. So do yourself a favor and find a way to start to get rid of some of that.
There you go. Yes, sir.
Makes sense. What are some of the long-term health problems men can experience due to divorce?
Wow. Definitely, health-wise, we're talking, carrying fear, carrying that trauma, depression, anxiety. And, men have to be very careful because it can not only affect us or themselves, it can affect your children. It can affect you in future relationships. It could maybe turn into some type of intergenerational trauma as well. Going forward, if obviously if young kids are involved. So, just protecting your mental health is the biggest thing, the biggest thing.
On the flip side of that is your physical health, right? You're stressed, you're tired, you're not sleeping well, you're eating like crap. All of this stuff compounds, right? And if you eat poorly, you're going to feel poorly physically and mentally.
Yeah.
Right. You need to feel good to feel good. Right.
Yeah.
So, just lay off all the comfort food and the alcohol or whatever your number of choices, because it's not going to help. It's a temporary reprieve, but all you're doing is making it worse.
Making it worse. That's true. I know for a fact that, and I'm talking as a woman, not a man. If you hold fear inside, that energy has to find a place to be, to go. So it's going to go somewhere in your body, and it's going to sit there, and it's going to harden, and it's going to become something. So whether it be an illness, whether it be to your stress affects your nervous system. So anything with your nervous system is going to be affected if you do not take good care of yourself mentally during this time, because your nervous system can be affected, your internal organs can be affected. But that that stress has to go somewhere, because it's not just the word stress, it's energy. It's energy, so it goes somewhere.
Yep.
And it balls itself up and it goes, and it sits where it needs to sit, and it festers and and can become cancerous. So make sure that you really, really, like the gentleman said, make sure that you're talking, because I found when I lost my voice, I acquired every sickness there was.
Mhm.
Every sickness there was. Had anxiety, I had everything.
Mhm.
But when I started to use my voice, and it's like a Coke bottle. When you shake it up, the top on, and you shake it up, and everything's going on in there, that's the same effect that
Mhm.
stress does to you.
Mhm.
It's the same effect. This is good. So I have to talk about the positive sides of health, of what happens in positive side, the effects of the positive side, because I want to know this for the men's perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's do it.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
hell yeah.
so
I'll start.
okay, what is the positive side of this?
So I didn't know really down deep who I was through this whole thing. My whole life I didn't know
Oh
up to
wow.
that point. And what that allowed me was, I was really hurt for a while, but it allowed me to get some other perspective, because now I could leave the situation where I was upset, tense, uncomfortable, not sleeping, like daily, right?
Right.
And I got some space. I created a different space for myself where I could begin to just calm my nervous system. And
Well,
luckily I
that's
wasn't
good.
drinking at the time. That was a whole other issue before. But I could give myself that, right? So that was like one of the biggest gifts I gave to myself, because it wasn't working. We couldn't
Right.
communicate. Yeah, it's okay. That's life. Life happens.
Yeah.
Um, so it was a really huge gift I gave to myself
Very
to
good.
get out and start to figure out my own stuff. And then as soon as I started to figure out my own stuff, I stopped blaming her.
Yeah.
That was fascinating,
I
right?
love that.
I'm
Yeah.
That
like,
is
I'm like,
fascinating.
well,
Yeah.
and I actually teach on this now, is taking responsibility on this whole other level. Every time you show up, however it is, that's you showing up that way. No one did
Yeah.
anything to you.
Nope.
Mhm.
So responsibility took on a whole new definition once I started doing this
Yes.
work. And
Absolutely.
and people start to get that, they go, oh crap. So
Yeah.
something else I've learned was that everybody's doing the best they can,
Yeah.
right? It's really hard to grasp when you're really upset or you see something horrible on the news.
Mhm.
If somebody was really able to do better than they could in that moment, they would have,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So this comes back to what Jess was talking about earlier about being able to accept, right? Accept that this happened, accept that you're unhappy.
Yeah.
Okay, good. What do you want to do next?
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so good. I mean, that's a mic drop, man. I don't even
Yeah,
know if
that was right.
I have much to add to that. That was
I'll
so
see you.
good. He's out. He's out. Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, I mean, that was great, Mike. That was really great. I think about a healthy divorce. I think about processing emotions to where you don't find yourself in a prolonged state of anxiety and depression, right? And
Yeah.
important to have someone to talk to, important to focus on yourself. When that's said and done, when all the smoke clears, whether it be picking up a new hobby or expanding your social circles or something along those lines, and having a sense of freedom and liberation as well. Just starting over can be a great thing if you allow it to be. You set yourself up for success going forward after that situation has settled. So
That's
Yeah.
nice.
That's a powerful word right there,
Yeah.
Justin. Allow,
Allow.
right?
Yeah.
Because my whole life I was taught to push. Man, you told me I couldn't do something, I was going to do it, and you better get the out of my way while I'm doing it. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know you could allow things to happen or allow yourself to heal, allow
Yes.
yourself to experience some relief. So I'm glad you brought that up, man. That's awesome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. So, is there life after divorce?
Oh, you better believe it. Life goes on. It's good life after divorce. It is
Okay.
good life. You know, like I said earlier, it's what you make it. You know, there's something about going through a challenging situation, going through the chaos, confusion, and climbing that hill, getting to the top of that hill and seeing what's on the other side, if you will. You know, there's something about that. And, you know, if you look at it like that, after you've gone through everything you've gone through, if you allow yourself to say and to think, I should say, to have the mindset of the best is yet to come, there are some marvelous and wonderful things on the other side of that. I mean, we all know people that have gone through a divorce and then met someone that was 100 times better aligned for them, and they go on to have a successful marriage, right? You know, we all know someone that has gone through a divorce and maybe decide to go back to school, get their bachelor's, master's, or PhD, and then advance their careers, right? You know, men and women go through divorce and they're back out on the dating scene. So what do a lot of them do? Oh, I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to hit the gym. I'm going to start running. I got to look nice and fit for my future spouse, you know? So yeah, there's definitely life. I mean, divorce is not the end all, the say all. It's just an experience. It's just an experience that one goes through. And then you go through that experience and then you go on to something else. So.
Oh yeah. I love that, Jesston. That's great. And pointing out the donuts to me again about Edna from earlier. she said, Mike, lay off the Krispy Kremes. You guys weren't on yet.
Like, hold on.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's fantastic. And if you could think back to your childhood, right? The first memory you had, something's always happened from that point on. So we've had, millions of experiences, and we're here, right? We're okay. I made it this far. I must be okay in some fashion. Right. But we get so caught up in the story we're telling ourselves. But we have to grow through these things. Right. We go through them. Why can't we grow through it? Right. Now I'm better at being able to be present for someone else. I'm better able to communicate. I can express myself a little bit more. That's awesome. Right. Yeah, right. That is massive. Right. So what if you could look back and say, all of these things have happened for me to get me to this place.
There you go.
Yeah.
I had to go through that messy thing, that fumbling, bumbling, yelling, screaming, tripping, falling, breaking stuff thing to get to here where I can go, oh, hey, this is pretty nice over here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
It's true. Very true. I can't even, I say that all the time. I really honestly say that these are the hurdles that we talk about, those rocks in the way when we're walking our journey. You try to kick a boulder. You're not kicking a boulder. You're gonna go through some pain, right? Once you kick it, you can kick a pebble or a smaller rock, but that boulder, you kick that, you're gonna go for some pain. And then eventually you're gonna get smart and say, let me push it out the way. And and so we go through those things because there are challenges, so that makes us different, changes us. And that's a good thing, because that's what we are sitting here to do, is to change, because we don't know. This life don't have no instructions, none whatsoever. And we're doing a darn good job if we made it this far, right?
That's right.
Darn good job. Yeah. Darn good job. Yeah. Well, I really do appreciate you gentlemen. Kyle is still in wherever.
Vietnam.
Yes, and Mr. Seth said he had it down wrong for, instead of Central Time, he had it Central Time 7:30 and not 6:30. So, but I told him we'll be doing something soon. So he sends his apologies. Doug is probably stuck in court, I'm pretty sure. But I want to thank you guys for being here. Thank you, men, not guys, men, for being here. Always coming and doing things with me. And this was very informative. And I hope that what's his name that was on? Edward really got something good from it. And this will be posted on the website. I'm going to have them kind of cut it up and make because I think this is an important subject, and I want to put it on LinkedIn as well. I think it's a really important subject that we don't talk about enough, especially about men and their health and what they feel. We know we talk about women all the time, what they feel, what we feel, but we never talk about the men, how they really feel. And I think that's important. No one talks about it. Nobody.
Right.
You guys feel just like us, so it's important. So thank you again for being here and being my special panelists and guests. So I'm gonna.
Thank you, Edna. Thank you so much. Been a
Thank you
great
for
chat.
having us.